Hi there, I'm Juliana Carroll, and this is my sister and partner in Coffee and Tech, Lisa Jackson. Together, we are your hosts here at the Coffee Tech Talk Show, exploring anything and everything to do with work orchestration and automation.
Hey everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Coffee Tech Talk Show. I'm Lee Jackson, and I'm back with my sister, Juliana Carroll. Say hello.
Hello.
We have a very special guest today by the name of Bill Ogle. He is the Vice President of Deutsche Bank for the last 9 years or so. And he's also worked for Dell, which we all know who that is. So with that said, Bill, why don't you tell everyone what it is that you do?
I started my career about 40 years ago. Started in the United States Marine Corps, originally as an electronics technician, but quickly moved into a management role, running one of the largest Marine Corps air stations with a team of civilian and Marine technicians. I really love the opportunity to be in management. When I got out of the Marine Corps, IBM was just rolling out its very first PCs. That tells you how long ago that was. I did have an opportunity to move into sales. I was in sales for about 15 years. And I was very lucky because the person who offered me the position said if I didn't like it, I could go back to being an operations manager. But about a year later, I loved what I was doing. I made 3 times as much money in sales.
Yep. So where did you guys meet? How do you know each other?
We ran into each other when you were first in sales, right?
Correct.
Yeah, and you were in sales. So I was also on the seller side, but in this case, I was working with the customer. I was the customer advisory for looking for different solutions, and Bill's company at the time was one of the candidates for the solutions. And then once you're in New York and working Wall Street, especially in the arena of banks, it's a very tiny community. So everybody knows each other. And when positions open and you're looking for a certain quality of people, then, you go back to saying, oh, I know so-and-so, he's doing something else right now, but he'll be good at X, Y, and Z, right? So I think the last time we worked together, that was the situation, right, Bill?
Correct. Yeah, it's probably been at least 15, probably 20 years that we've worked, and we've probably worked with each other maybe half the times.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you're one of those special people that have been in project management roles and operations and also sales, because I'm actually sales and marketing background, and operations and sales are 2 totally different positions and mentalities. So which one do you like better, and and why?
Well, you're right. They're very, very different. I think what I've liked in terms of the similarities between both roles is being able to kind of coach and mentor and develop teams that you have working with you. I think one of the things that made me very successful in both roles was knowing what the other half was responsible for doing. So selling a project, a very large, complex, either managed outsourcing deal or professional service, I also was very aware and very cognizant of the fact that a delivery team actually had to deliver what I was committing to, what I was promising. So I knew that there was really 2 halves to the equations. Not only what was being sold, but also what had to be delivered after I, signed the contract.
So what do you enjoy most about sales?
I think I like the fact that there is kind of a pursuit and there's an opportunity.
So how do you determine a job well done?
I think it's pretty simple. It's just that you either meet or exceed the expectations that's set by your clients. Is that typical with any project that you have, or at least in a large corporation, there's multiple stakeholders. You have people that are responsible for the budgets and for financials. You have the technical subject matter experts. You have end users. You have a whole variety of people. And you have to be able to address the needs of all of them, because what you'll find is if you don't, you're going to have people that will feel that the project or the service you're providing just wasn't successful. So, you may have it where the project came in on time, met the technical requirements, but was over budget. So you view that as being, job well done. Or, you met the budget, but you missed 1 or 2 key things that the customer required that your product or service that needed to deliver. So I really think it's a really matter of listening, really understanding what the customer
What
wants.
you're saying about the listening.
So I think it's just really important that you need to really listen very carefully to what your customer wants. And, there's a lot of nuances to that. There are a number of things that the customer is looking for, and you almost make a checklist and making sure that at the end of the day, that all of those things that the customer said that's important to them is really what you're trying to strive to achieve. And success is really understanding that expectation and then exceeding them. It's pretty simple.
Okay. So after 40 years in this industry, in this business, is this what you always wanted to do?
It wasn't initially. Originally, I thought I had dreams of being a Marine Corps pilot.
Okay.
The fact that my eyesight didn't qualify for that made me change directions. And, interesting story being in the military. You show up, and if you're not qualified for one thing, they'll find something else. And I had a choice of either going in and learning electronics or going to be in the infantry. So I chose electronics.
Okay. That's kind of similar. Jay was in the military as well.
I do. And, the thing is for me, I've very, very been fortunate that I've had a lot of opportunities to do a number of different things in my career. And I think part of it is just, showing up, doing a little bit more than what's expected of you, and just, getting the job done. And people will see that and they'll ask you to do other things.
So one of the things that I want to chat with you about, Bill, based on what you just said right now, it was about sales, about what's a job well done, and is about meeting the customer expectations, right? So I kind of want to explore a little bit. Being in technology, technologists think salespeople are just, not real. So sometimes that's why they.
I was waiting. I was waiting for that.
Technologists think, oh, you're just a salesperson. And then somebody somewhere in my career sat me down and said, Juliana, he said, you buy things every day, right? And they said, how do you know what is the right thing for you to buy? And how do you know how well you spent your money? Right? He goes, that is the role of a salesperson. It was his nice way to say, respect me. And it resonated with me, right? Because everybody has a role. The one job of the salesperson is to really dig out what is it that you really need in spite of what you're saying sometimes, right? You might say, I want a gray sofa. What you really meant was you want it to be a little bit more a lavender shade of gray. And if you brought a gray chair that has a tidbit of sage, you would totally not appreciate it. It would, you would not be happy, and it's not going to be as of your expectation, much less exceeding your expectation. But did you articulate all the nuances of what your expectation is? Right? The job of a salesperson is to get that expectation so crystal clear, right? But the shade of the salesperson in technology is he has to know, what questions to ask. As technologists, we don't appreciate the sales talent.
Look at it, the art of sales is kind of like the art of great conversation. You don't want somebody who's going to monopolize a conversation. If you have a salesperson that shows up and all that person does is talk, you're probably going to start to tune off and just not listen to him anymore. However, if he shows up and he starts asking questions because he's genuinely interested in hearing what you have to say, and he just doesn't ask the question and then just move on, but he actually asks the question, listens, has a great follow-up, really kind of understands where you're coming from, then he's going to get closer to understanding what you need and be able to provide that solution.
These days, I'm much more appreciative. Salespeople are now my partners, so.
There's definitely an art to sales, right? Yeah. And there's also the saying of the 80-20 rule, where 80% of the time you should listen and 20% of the time you should talk, right? And marketing people tend to forget that as well. So that's my role. So with that said, you're what is your management style? How do you mentor people that want to get into the field that you're in right
It's a lot about listening, and
now?
it's about asking the right questions. More formally, probably over the last 10 years, I've worked a lot with, as a veteran, with Veterans on Wall Street, and actually lead their mentorship group. And what we do is we help veterans around the country, partnered with a company called ACP, to provide both interviews, resume building, and mock interview trials before people go to their jobs. But it's really a matter of making sure that somebody will tell you, here's what I want, and then kind of, quietly challenging them to say, well, why is it that you want that? And it turns out that in many cases they don't. Maybe they're driven in one direction, but as you start to ask some follow-up questions, you find that there might be a different reason or maybe an underlying subject that you just need to be able to get to and uncover.
Let's take it back to work. Like, how do you define work? What is work to you?
So, my definition and my thought around work, has certainly changed over the years. I've kind of evolved and kind of grown and changed that it's really multifaceted. You have a lot of relationships within your work, relationship with the company, relationship with your managers, peers, people that are on your team. And at the end of the day, I think it comes down to, building relationships with these people and, coming up with a common, goal or set of objectives. I think people are looking for, a purpose when they show up for work. Do I know why I'm doing my job? Is it fulfilling? Does it, reach, certain responsibilities? As an employee, am I valued? Am I appreciated? And a sense of satisfaction that you get from doing the job. So I think it's a lot, different. It's a lot more complex than just a simple compensation issue. I think there's a lot of things that people now look for at work that provide the satisfaction that go along with, 30% of what you do during each day.
So what are the keys to delivering a successful project to you?
I think that you can't deliver a successful project unless you're very, very clear on what the outcome is going to be, what either requirements or the expectations that the customer has, and making sure that you have the right product or services, and just as important, the right team to do the delivery.
I really do believe that honesty is very important, when you're selling, and customers today are a lot smarter than what they used to be. So, and I think a lot of salespeople are afraid sometimes when they're asked a question, and if they can't have the answer right there and then, they just tend to say almost anything, right? When in reality, what you really should say is that, I'm not sure about that, but let me get back to you. And that's one of the easiest thing that you can do. And the customer will respect that, right? Because you're going to go back and get that answer for them. And still till this day, I think a lot of salespeople are afraid to say that.
No, that's a very, very good point. And you're right. That does, I think, give a lot of credibility to the person. And I think, customers don't necessarily need to have the answer right now. If it's the wrong, they would rather wait 24 or 48 hours for you to come back with the right answer. The other thing too is, I was very fortunate that most of the projects that I sold were, professional services projects that I would have to sell projects over and over and over again to the same set of customers. So I knew that if my very first project failed or wasn't successful, then I wouldn't be able to sell the future projects into that same account. So it gives you, pause or to be cautious about not overcommitting and under delivering, because you risk, your relationship with your customer, you risk your credibility, and you risk future sales.
I think too, like, as again, I've been on both sides, right? And once you have that honest conversation with your sales, with the vendor, and that salesperson now know what you expect, right? And you trust them. It's so much easier, because like somebody like me, for instance, like I have multiple projects, right? So if I have a vendor partner who's the face to me is my salesperson, that I trust them, I don't have to repeat the same thing over and over again, right? We've got, standards now, we've got metrics now, we have shortcut words, that kind of stuff. So I think I would like to say for the audiences, respect your salespeople.
Yes, please.
They can be your good partner.
Exactly. So what is Bill's pet peeve at work? What do you see that just bugs the heck out of you?
I think the thing that kind of bothers me the most is when people don't show the right level of accountability and ownership for responsibilities or for projects. They require a lot of follow-up. The thing is that I expect the people that I work with, I work for, that work for me, that there's a certain level of trust. That if someone asks me to do something, and I accept it and I can do it, I'll take ownership of it and I'll just get it done. If there's a problem, a risk, a concern, a delay, I'll communicate back to that person and say, listen, I've got some really bad news. If there's a delay or a product didn't show up on time, but I try and get ahead of it by telling them the bad news as soon as possible. Because I found in my career that delaying bad news never helps the outcome. It's just, however, by giving that bad news earlier on, it might give you a chance to adjust, may give you a chance to look at other options. Maybe there's another supplier that can get that product from another location and still be able to make the deadline. I think that not having good communication, having to chase people for follow-up or, status, that's always been a pet peeve of mine.
Yeah. There's this 3-letter word, acronym back in the day, CYA, remember? So telling someone when you expect a problem is going to happen, or telling someone about a problem is not covering your butt, right? Is you respecting that person who's expecting something, time to adjust.
That's the interesting thing about projects, in that, you can have a perfectly laid out plan.
Yeah.
And that the more complex the project is, the more problems it's going to have. And found, and the way most customers will view you is that, every project will have problems, but it's how responsive you are in addressing them and how quickly you can get ahead of those problems and fix them is really what kind of gives you credit as a vendor or as a service provider or as an internal technology team, is how you address the problems that you're going to face, because they're going to come in any project that you do.
Right.
Yeah. And internally, as I remember the entry level or junior salesperson that I was the first 3 years. And I see this a lot with junior salespeople, where they don't want to be that one that has to always ask the questions, and they want to be able to want to solve everything. And if something goes left, it's like they feel like they can figure everything out, but they fail to realize that, everyone else that's more senior than you have probably gone through it, and they could probably help you. But of course, the badass salespeople we think we are, we could do everything ourselves when we can't. Right. Sure. And so I've definitely made, some mistakes there. And now that's actually one of my pet peeves when I see that. I mean, you have to keep telling them, use us, use us. We can help you. You're not going to look bad and you're not going to look terrible. You're still going to be that great salesperson that you think you are. It's great to be confident, but you don't know everything. Right. And you have to be able to tell your salespeople that. Right. So
earlier on, I said, to the buyers, trust your salespeople and value them. Right. So now for the salespeople, we've already stuck our neck out for you. Right. We've already, we've already risked our name and our, roadmap and so on. So we have a vested interest in your success, right? Once we become a partner. So I would value you even more if you were to say, heads up, here's what's going on, right? I'm working it through. Give me 2-3 days. I'll give you a status update. Hopefully is resolved, right? And then when it's not resolved, say, hey, heads up, can't resolve this. You have to find another solution. That means I will call you again next time, right? Because you gave me that perspective. So don't think that we're just trying to torture you. We also have a vested interest in your success, because your success is our success, right?
That's right.
So
when you succeed, we succeed.
Exactly.
So, all right. So let's go back to projects. How do you get projects funded, internally, or when? How do you see that working if someone was to ask you, about a project going through the system in your company?
Is really demonstrating to the stakeholders, and whether it's the CFO or who's ever the executive decision maker on the project, is making sure that they understand very clearly what their return is on that investment. Because the one thing that salespeople tend to lose focus on, or even the person who's pushing the project through internally, is that there are other competing projects for that funding. There's a limit within every organization. So whether you're spending $500,000 or $5 million, there's a finite pool of funding within that corporation. So you're not only competing with the 2 or 3 other competitors or vendors for your service, but you may be with 3 other projects that are completely different within the organization for that same funding. So it's really a matter of positioning your product that's going to have the best return for whatever that value is. And it really doesn't matter the price, but that's really a matter of understanding what the requirements are and making sure you're very consistent in how you're demonstrating that benefit or return.
So can I add to that? And I would like for you to add to this discussion, right? I'm going to offer up my pet peeve now. When I work with a vendor, and yes, I do need, that solution, and yes, I trust you, is when you don't understand the budget cycle, right? When I say, okay, let's work on this, and then, so that we can get funded next year, I mean that.
Sure.
There's nothing you can say, there's no amount of time once we decide on a solution and agree on it, or how many phone calls is gonna be not next year, because the budget cycle, right? If you're not in my October budget cycle, you're a chance, and you shouldn't put that on your forecast. What do you think about that?
I completely understand. And again, having lived on both sides of the desk, you also have to appreciate for the salespeople that there is a ridiculous amount of pressure.
Yeah.
Once an opportunity is identified, to close it really at all costs. Really, and there may be incentives they can provide that their senior management will say, go back to the customer, and you may have told them 8 times that there's no budget this year. That still doesn't mean that you're not told to show up, talk to the customer, see what kind of incentive you can.
Understood. But this is a part of listening, and this is a part of trusting, right? Yep. And this is part of understanding all the elements, including the budget cycle, to get your sales done, right? So when I tell you, don't forecast it until January, I mean that. You should listen to me, right? If it means that you need to go away and focus on other things until nearer to that time, let's do it, right? Because I'm not going to say something without a reason. You know what I mean? So
the problem is not everyone will be that, forthright like you. So there's different, and as a salesperson, you get a lot of different types of answers. And until you say, no, Lee, get out of my face, not today, not next year, do not call me until 6 months from today, or I'm going to hang up on you and block you, we're going to keep doing it. What else do you see that's going on in the industry? With the whole pandemic situation that's going on, what are the feelings in the industry?
Well, a couple things. I think that over the last 60, 90, 120 days, a number of us, or most of us, have had to make, considerable changes to our work-life balance, being remote, which I think has created some inherent challenges just in the way that we do our work. Because I think people, from what I've heard, have been very pleased with the way things have worked out over the last 60, 90 days. They think that there really hasn't been as much of an impact for people working remotely as they might have been afraid of a year, 2 years, 3 years ago. Fortunately for me, the companies that I've worked in, we've always had a very, very strong remote workforce. I worked for Dell back in the early 2000s, and we were virtual back then, 15 years ago. We were kind of a market leader in that we worked remote. We were in front of our customers. We were, client facing all the time. And I think that more customers will kind of adopt that as a long-term model.
Yeah. I think that most of us that we're not used to it, me being in sales, I'm used to remote, but the majority of the company, is not. We have 115,000 square feet where we have sales, marketing, operations in the front. And then you've got, the shop production in the back, that kind of a thing. So it's definitely changed the whole, the way that we do business, in events, exhibits, trade shows, and many other things. I mean, there's a lot of people out here that are a little bit lost, when it comes to the whole virtual world. It's definitely been tough for our industry. And we've had to make, a lot of changes. And now we're trying to figure out, how do we bring, we've already talked about this with another guest, how do you bring that intimacy of meeting people, face to face into this virtual world? So there's a lot of things that we're having to, figure out, where else you guys got this figured out a long time ago,
Well,
so.
Yes and no. I mean, we're used to having meetings in virtual, but we're not used to developing relationships through virtual, right?
Right.
So, yeah. So everybody, I think, has a little room to grow in that. But I think just like we did this show, right? Just do it.
Yeah.
Like let the bloopers be the bloopers. You know what I mean? Just do it. Growth doesn't mean perfection, right? This is always the goal, right? But in the journey, it's never perfection. So just do it. Try it.
One of the things that Dell always had a sayings about was about your presentation, and there was the presentation that you want to give, the presentation that you give, and the presentation you'd give again if you had another chance.
Right.
It's all, you always have an aspiration that it's going to be, and then it turns out that it may not be exactly perfect. And if you had a chance to do it all over again, like maybe this Coffee Tech Talk, I might be doing it different if I had a second chance. So, but anyway.
Yeah. I like that, actually. I like that a lot. What you said, what Dell did. So that's a very, very good point. So, okay. Well, with that said, how can people get a hold of you if they want to ask you questions and connect with you? You have an email or LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably the best way to get in touch with me. Just via LinkedIn. So, but great.
Bill Ogle.
Yes, Bill Ogle. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Don't go away, but let me do some quick housekeeping. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode of Coffee Tech Talk Show. If you have any questions, you can always contact us at connect@coffeetechtalk.show, and all of our social media sites on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn at Coffee Tech Talk. Oh, and also on YouTube, Coffee Tech Talk. With that said, Jay, do you have anything else to add?
No. See you next time.
Okay. Thank you so much, Bill, and see you next time.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks, guys. Bye.